Sicily, Italy. Torrential rain him alleged devastation flood across Sicily, leaving towns submerged, roads impassable, and thousands without power. In a matter of hours, violent downpour transformed streets into raging rivers, swept away cars and flooded homes from Palermo to Catania. Local officials described the event as one of the most intense storms in recent years. Firefighters conducted over 400 emergency operations overnight. Rescue started residents trapped in vehicles and basements. In Palermo, torrents of water surged through the historic center, flooded the city, made boulevard via Roma, and submerged parts of the central train station. It was like watching the sea invade the city, said residents. Maria Lombardo, close ground floor shop was destroyed within minutes. In Catania, severe flash floods overwhelmed the drainage system, while nearby villages such as Geri and Acriville forced landslides that cut off entire communities. The regional civil protection agency issued a red alert. Italy highest warning level urged residents to stay indoors and avoid travel. Helicopters from the fire brigade were deployed to monitor rising river levels, particularly along the Semita rivers, where nearly overwhelmed these banks. Meteorologists explained that the Mediterranean cyclone, sometimes called the Medicane, formed south of the island, drawing warm, most air from the sea. This is great violent connective storm, the tropical link. Rainfall exceeded 150 mm in just 6 hours. Experts warn that such phenomena are becoming more frequent as sea temperature rise. Sicily Governor Renata Santa called the flooded sacrament of our fragility in the face of extreme weather. He announced emergency funds are affected multiple to promise to accelerate drainage and infrastructure improvement. The aftermath paints a grim picture. Destroyed cars collapsed, relating walls and entire neighborhoods collided in a mood. Local fishermen in the parts of Mazzara de Vola reported dozens of vessels damaged to surging tides. As cleanup crews walk tirelessly to move across Sicily is one of the explore mixing their disbelief. We are used to rain, said farmer Salvatore Russo from the ENA, but this is sometimes ills entire. With the most storms forecast in the coming days, Italy burst to further disruption. As some margins to how climate change is reshaping life to the most sun-drenched regions. In Palermo, video footage showed bus floating down main boulevards and people wading through the waist-deep water in historic center. It felt like the city was drowning, said residents Gulento Marina, who Norway escalated to flooded Catania via Roma. Emergency crew worked overnight to rescue more than 500 people, including families trapped in the apartment building and tourists stranded in a hotel. The airport of Catania temporarily suspended operations as runway flooded, while railway service across eastern Sicily were halted due to mudslides and debris covering the tracks. Authority also evacuated several villages and Mount Etna, where heavy triggered landslides and engulfed roads and damaged power lines, cutting the electricity to hundreds of homes. Meteorologists identified the cause of powerful Medicane. The Mediterranean hurricane-like system formed over unusually warm sea waters south of Italy. The storm brought record-breaking rainfall exceeded 200 mm in some areas within 20 hours, alongside gale force winds and intense lightning strikes. Climate experts from the Italian National Research Council warning the rising sea temperature are amplified the frequency and such extreme weather events. What I see witnessed in Sicily in parts of border Mediterranean climate shift, said climatologist Luca Marchiali. Hospitals across the island have been placed into the high alert and rescue teams continue a search for the missing residents. At least 2 fatalities have been confirmed, including the elderly man who had the car swept away near Alderi. Sicily Governor Renato Sinacci announced that immediate disaster relief force and deployed additional military units to assist with the rescue and cleanup efforts. The strategy must be a wake call, he said. Our infrastructure and emergency system must adapt to changing climate. Coastal town in rural village in Sicily have experienced some of the worst damage. The agriculture sector, which is crucial in the island economy, have been hit hard, with the fields and cars destroyed in the rising waters. Landslides have cut off aces of several mountains regions, complicating rescue efforts. The situation remains real, with the emergency crew working around the clock to respond to new incidents and then arise. Italy is grappling with the severe flooding after days of relentless rain, particularly affected with the northern region of the country. Torrential downpours have caused rivers to swell, burst their banks and inundate towns and villages. The latest episode of flooding have left authorities struggling to cope with the growing crisis, with the thousands of people evacuated from their homes. The region of Emilia-Romagna, Lombardy and Veneto have been among the hardest hit. In Emilia-Romagna, widespread damage to infrastructure have been reported, with the roads submerged, bridges washed away and homes flooded. Several rivers, including the Po and the Agrio, have reached critical levels, forcing emergency services to respond rapidly to prevent further damage. The situation has been compounded by landslides in hilly areas, blocked roads and isolated communities. In the heart of the Mediterranean, the Italian island of Sicily has long been synonymous with the sun of the tempting coastline and seductive blend of the history and culture. However, this idyllic landscape is recently has been transformed into a dramatic scene of nature fury. A formidable storm marked by resounding rain and fierce winds and lashed Sicily, unveiling the vulnerable of even the most picturesque square of the region with the firms of weather. The storm onslaught was achieved with the meteorologists barely able to predict and intensify before the unleashed food and made the apeon of fury. Winning our streets and town crisis across the Sicily were inundated, transformed urban center into unwelcoming, water-loaded mazes. The rain, increasing unforgiving, pointed the wind portrait of the region undecided by the elements. In Palermo, the Sicilian capital, scenes in the chaos unfolded. As streets and usually burst with the life and aroma of Sicily, crash while deserted save from ascensional vehicles struggling against the rising water. The iconic Church Massimo, a testament of Sicily agriculture, dangerous stood with the silence within to unflooding calamity. As the sun rose over the devastation streets, scenes of resilience began to emerge. Volunteers from neighboring towns arrived the shovels, pumps, and food supplies. In Catania University, standard formed human chain to help clear debris to home of elderly residents. Church bells rang in solidarity of many communities, helped nightly prayers to injure and displace it. One image of white Sicily flag flying proudly over the flood town hall became a national symbol of strength. Local mayor called at Rome and declared a state of emergency emergency to obtain additional funds and rescue to rapid reconstruction. Engineers are now installing bridges and roads, help workers to warn into possible communication flow to overflow, seen in standing water. Meteorologists at Vito, Italia say a storm system may be raking the residual rains and extended to continue for several more days. The ground is standing with the water. Warning climatologist Dr. Elena Ferraro evans tell additional rainfall could cause new floods and landslides. Environmental activists are calling this storm a wake-up call. This is not just a random error, said Lucia Marinel of Climate Italia. This is the result of decades of neglecting environmental policy of urban planning. We must change now. International support has begun to arrive at the form of offer assistance from the European Union of neighboring countries. Italian celebrities, soccer players and Pope have been experiencing this solidarity. Storm winds with the cyclone rotation around the lowland between Basilicata and Campania, when it gets up to 100 km/h in the lower Turanian Sea. Sicilian, Ionian and Adriatic straits are the result of strong winds surge along the open coast. The situation is less critical in the West Mons basins and the upper Turanian Sea. Bad weather is raging in Lazio, but not only there. Strong storms surge throughout the Italy and snow at the well low altitude. The sea is stormy off the coast of Ponza is the ferry connecting of the island Formia and the marker of the waves. The ship brought to the Formia left an hour late today. By evening it was still and the road can left Ponza at 3:13 p.m. It is expected to arrive Formia around 8:45 p.m. Rome, Italy was hit by unprecedented hailstorm, surprised and catching locals by tourists of what. The storm brought heavy rain, lightning and hailstorm the size of a golf ball, caused damage of cars, homes and businesses. Witness reported hearing long bands of the hailstorm stuck roofs and windows. Many took to social media share photos and video of severe storm, with some experienced disbelief of such weather could occur in a normally sunny sea.
Mai visto una roba del genere, guarda!
The Italian island of Ischia near Naples have been devastated by powerful flood and landslides triggered by relentless rainfall. Torrents of water swept through the town, tearing impaired flood, burying homes, smote, and leaving residents in shock at the state of destruction. In the town of Casamicciola Terme, one of the hardest hit era, houses were engulfed by the cascading mud and debris. It was like avalanches of water and the earth cascading down, said Rosa Espana, a resident who narrowly escaped with her family. In a seconds, everything we owning goes down. Authorities confirmed multiple deaths, with the several people still missing as such, and the rescue operations continue. Dozens of residents were injured, while hundreds and evacuation from the unsteppable buildings. Schools, shops and businesses remain closed as emergency crews clear blocked streets. Emergency snow cars overturned and a half buried with the rescue workers and volunteers did through their layers of mud with their hands to reach service. Power outage and damaged water supplies have left many communities isolated. The island's still terrain combined with the days of heavy rain triggered a series of landslides that shut down mountains into the coastal town. Experts noted that devastation and uncontrolled construction have worsened island's vulnerability to such disaster. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni experienced condolences to victim families and pledged immediate aid, calling the disaster a national tragedy. Italian Civil Protection Agency has deployed helicopters, driver and special units to assist rescue efforts, with the local authority declared a state of emergency. The flood has also remained wider concern. Each popular tourist destination known for the hot spring and bridge is now facing questions about building safety and climate resilience. Sicily was hit a severe storm that swept across the island overnight, causing torrential rain, storms, winds, and widespread flooding. Palermo, Catania, and several smaller towns were worst affected, with the streets thrown into raging rivers, and entire neighborhoods were left without power. Residents reported panic as the water flooded historic city center. It was terrible. In a matter of minutes, the water rose above the car's doors. We had to abandon the vehicles, said Salvatore Russo, the driver from Palermo. Emergency service carried out dozens of rescue operations, including rescuers, families trapped in their homes, and motorists stuck in the underpasses. Authority temporarily closed schools and government offices in several municipalities as prediction. The Sicily Civil Protection Agency declared a highest level of water alert. At least one hospital of Catania reported flooding in the lower floors, forcing staff and relocate patient. The storm also dealt a serious blow to agriculture, damaging olive groves, citrus, orange, and vineyards, were left to blackburn the island economy. Farmers estimated to damage of millions of euros, further complicating the situation in a region that already struggled with the drought to binging of a year. Flights to and from Palermo to Catania airports were delayed and cancelled, and ferry service between Sicily and mainland Italy was suspended to several hours due to rush seas. Meteorologists are linking this storm to a powerful Mediterranean cyclone, sometimes called the Medicon, from the form to the warm seawater full intense weather system. Experts warn that the climate change is making such event more frequent and destructive. The president of the Sicily region promised rapid assistance to the affected communities, stressing the urgent need to strategic flood protection. This storm has once again demonstrated the vulnerability of our island in us. We must do decisively to protect life and livelihood, he said. Public transportation was paralyzed, with the parts of the subway lines A and B suspended, bases rerouted, and the flights in Campina airport delayed after runway were covered in hail. More than 13,000 residents were left without power, living entire neighborhoods in the dark. The economic impact is already severe. Outdoor territories across Rome historic center were destroyed, and initial estimates suggest that the damage could expect 15 million. Farmers in Lazio described the storm and destination. An entire vineyard and olive groves are destroyed in a matter of minutes. Experts blame a collision between humid Mediterranean air and an intense cold front. Meteorologist Elena Rossi noted Rome is experiencing storm weather previously unthinkable. Climate change is increasing both their frequency and intensity. Resident and shaken by their silence, cafe owner Marco De Santis, weapon broken glass, had the balcony said. The city was survived the Melina, but every year nature is harder. It is a weekend we cannot ignore. Rome came to a sudden halt after a severe hailstorm swept through the city, flooding the streets, paralyzing traffic, and shocking residents with the scale of the event. In the matter of minutes, large hailstorms covered squares and boulevards, transformed parts of the Italian capital into winter scenes in the middle of autumn. Meteorologists explained that the storm was caused by the collisions of the most Mediterranean air with the approaching cold front, which caused severe thunderstorms capable of producing hailstones up to 4 centimeters in diameter. The storm in both the city center of the surrounding suburbs damaged cars, broke windows, and blocked drainage systems. Public transport was severely disrupted. Buses were stuck in flooding underpasses, and trams stopped because the tracks were covered in ice. Passengers described it chaotic scenes. It was like driving balls. To had to stop and wait because it was impossible to see the road, said Marco, a local taxi driver. Emergency service responded to hundreds of calls. A rescue driver stuck in rising waters to help in precedent to the injured after slipping in the sidewalks, made slippery by hail. Rome, Italy, a powerful and a sudden hailstorm brought the Italian capital to the standstill, transforming the historic streets into frozen torrential and living residents in shock. Within minutes, dark clouds gathered over the eternal city, unleashed the violent downpour of ice that covered cars, monuments, and pigeons under the thick layer of white. Meteorologists describe the event of extreme collective cell, an unusual atmospheric clash between warm Mediterranean humidity and a cold Arctic front. Hailstones, some exceeded 3 centimeters in diameter, pounded rooftops and vehicles. Standing off alarm across the city, wind gusts reached nearly 100 km/h, intensified the destruction, uprooted trees and scattered debris along the Tiber River. Emergency service received over 120 calls. In 2 hours, dozens of vehicles were abandoned the submerged streets, and firefighters worked tirelessly to free people trapped in the underpass. Several metro lines and bus roads were suspended due to flooding and power outage. It looked like a scene from the disaster movie, said resident Maria Lombardo. In a few minutes, day turned into night, and the streets became a river in the ice. Italy. A sudden massive hailstorm has caused extensive damage across Italy, paralyzing major cities and devastated vast agriculture areas. This extreme weather struck late Monday night, battered region from Lombardy to Tuscany, with the hailstones the size of a golf ball and the wind exceeded 100 km/h. It left a trail of destruction, flooding, and chaos. Residents in Milan, Bologna, and Palermo reported scenes of panic in the dark storm cloud relating in an eerily sunlight within minutes. It was followed a different onslaught, hail smashed roofs, shattered car windows, and tearing streets and frozen rivers. It sounded like an explosion, said Franza Bianchi, a shop owner in the Milan. The hailstorm hit so hard they bent to mental separate inward. The fire department across northern Italy received over 2,000 emergency calls, reported to trapped drivers and clearing roads buried under the layer of ice. Power lines shattered, trees and uprooted an entire region, plunged into darkness overnight. Train services were halted in multiple areas, while the Milan Malnesa Airport and Bologna Guglielmo Marconi Airport experienced a delay in cancellation due to heavy hail estimated on runways.
Madre de Dios. Su, qué desastre. Mira. Ahora mismo en Garachico.
According to Italy's Civil Protection Department, the storm was part of the weather system moving across central city, Italy, where warm Mediterranean air collided vitally with a cold front from the northern Europe. It was an explosive mix, said meteorologist Giulia Bianchi. The sudden temperature drop triggered intense convection, prompting hail and unusual sights of this time of year. Shops and restaurants interest even accompanied forest sacred flood with outdoor treacherous terraces and markets still destroyed. Several hospitals reported minor injuries, mostly from the people sliding or brain stuck in fallen debris. It lasted barely 20 minutes, said cafe owner Aliza Romano, but the damage caused local like hurricane airspace. The storm aftermath left Rome's historic landmarks cratered in ice and a rail haunting sites. Tourists shaped photos to Colosseum and Spanish steps, gilding the under street slides, and the city crews walked through the night to clear debris and restore normal traffic. Experts warned that extreme weather like this could become more frequent. Mediterranean storms are intensified due to climate change, said climatologist Dr. Lorenzo Conti. Rome may see more violent hail and flash flood in the recent heat. As a calm toured by Mourning, Romans awoke the melted hail and the city shaking the yet another reminder to nature growing unpredictability. The storms can suddenly catch residents and travelers off guard, with windy streets were transformed into rivers. At least 2 people were injured by falling debris and dozens were rescued from the flooding cars, and the Valle de Porco responded more than 500 emergency calls. "I've never seen anything like it," said Luca Perry, a taxi driver whose car was caught in the flood waters near Tiber River. "I felt like the sky was falling." The storm hit central areas hardest, including Torrential, Catania, and San Giovanni, where entire intersection were flooded by flash floods, lighting lit up the sky over the Coliseum and St. Peter Basilica, creating unforgettable images that quickly spread on social media. "Rome looked at something out of the Bible," one eyewitness wrote online. "Thunder rumbled between the ancient monuments." Meteorologists from Italy's Severe Protection Department confirmed more than 19 millimeters of rainfall in less than 19 minutes. On Wednesday afternoon, a sudden and violent hailstorm hit Rome, forced residents and tourists to seek shelters, and a peace pelted the city. The streets were quickly covered with a thick layer of hail, turning iconic locations such as Pisa, Navona, Valle di Corso, and Trastevere into frozen pools. Witnesses described the storm as absolutely terrifying. Gianni Rossi, a local taxi driver, said, "I lived in Rome all my life, but I've never seen anything like this. Cars were damaged and a hailstorm bouncing on the roof like bullets." Emergency service reported more than 400 calls, including people trapped in the cars, flooded names, and a fallen trees blocked major road. Valle de Porco warmed round the clock to clear the streets and help residents. Several metro stations, including Repubblica and Barbani, were temporarily closed due to water entering the tunnel, leaving passengers stranded. Authorities confirmed minor injuries from the hail strikes and slippery sidewalk. Meteorologists explained that the storm was a result of rapid interaction between the most Mediterranean air and a cold northern front, creating extremely unstable conditions. The classic connective supercell storm, short-lived but extremely intense. We lost almost everything again, sang restaurant Elena Rossi, her voice breaking to the survey of the match. Elsewhere, boats were tested again. The storm amount went, water taxis capacity, and debris fills and channels. Emergency crew working throughout the night and evacuate elderly residents to reinforce power lines damaged by the fallen trees. Schools and museums remain closed and cleanup operation continue. Meteorologists attributed the storm to collisions between warm Mediterranean air and cold front descending from the northern Europe, and combination that triggering extreme conditions and intense rainfall. Italy's Civil Protection Agency has issued a red alert for the much of Veneto region, warning that more storms could follow.
Non ci credo. Oddio. Qua. La moto. La macchina.
A sudden and violent storm hit Sicily, leaving flooded streets and damaged houses, and residents trying to save themselves. Torrential rain, strong winds, and large hailstorms swept across the island, hitting Palermo, Catania, and Messina particularly hard. "It was terrible," said Gianni Conti and residents of Palermo. "The hail broke out windows, and the water poured into the streets like a river. I've never seen anything like it." Emergency service worked for the full capacity, responded to fallen trees, blocked roads, and stranded cars. Several rivers, including smaller turbulence in Catania, they burst at their banks, forced dozens of families to evacuate. The streets to coastal towns were impassable, and local airports responded to numerous delays and cancellation. Historical cities were also affected. In Palermo, flooded inundated part of the cathedral and Quattro County Securio, while tourist centers such as Torrential had to carry out allow emergency evacuation. Boats were washed away from their mooring, and the local market were forced to close. Meteorologists explained the storm as a collision between the Mediterranean low-pressure system and warm, humid air from Africa. This great short but extremely intense storm. Agriculture area suffered significant damage. Olive groves, vineyard and citrus orange by damage by the hail, threatening both local economy and exports. Authority called for emergency aid to affected farmers and businesses. Rome was gripped in the chaos late Tuesday. A violent storm swept across the Italian capital, bringing torrential rain, hail and lightning strikes have plunged the parts of the city in darkness. Within an hour, the storm transformed cobblestone streets into rivers and flooded metro tunnels, leaving the residents stranded in an emergency service stretched within. The Italian Civil Protection Department confirmed over 800 emergency calls overnight. Streets surrounding Pisa, Venezia, Termini Station and Vatican were submerged under the half-meter of water. Local media reported dozens of vehicles stranded with the fallen trees, crushed parked cars and blocked tram lines. "I felt like the sky was collapsing," said Francesca Rinaldi, the resident of Trastevere. "The thunder was constant, it shook windows, we had struggled hitting the roof, I threw the glass would shatter." Meteorologists described the storm as a part of the Mediterranean supercell, filled the unstoppably warm sea and the cold wind with the cold front moving south from the Alps. Wind reached 19 km per hour, and a hailstorm the size of walnuts battered rooftops and monuments. Dramatic footage circulated online showing lightning strikes near the Colosseum and illumination St. Petersburg sky and the flashing era white. The Tiber River's wavery rapidly prompted warning to the residents living along the banks. Rome against infrastructure is not built in such intensify, such Professor Enzo Mariani, a climate analyst from the Super Z University. This is another reminder that climate change is making extreme weather for more frequent is unpredictable across southern Europe.